What do you guys think? You think Micron gauges, like, that's in our manuals constantly. Do you think those are a waste of time?
What's that? The micron gauges?
Yeah, what do you think?
Oh no, those are absolute necessity. Whenever I started out in the field, I'm gonna be blunt, I'm gonna be honest. I did not use a micron gauge, but that's just because I didn't know to. Where I was working, they just said, just go hook up this vacuum pump and just let it go for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and pull it off, and we're good to go. And you learn really fast once you start doing some digging in your own research how critical those are because I mean, whenever you're reading a just a gauge, there's no way that you can really tell if that's really below, the micron level that the manufacturer is calling for. So you're really just guessing. You're just looking at a gauge and going off of how long it's been, and you're just going off of that and you're just letting it go. So absolutely, yes, you definitely need a micron gauge.
Not just for 32.
No, not just yeah, not just for
Yeah,
32. We're talking about
yeah.
every refrigerant.
Hey, and also, hey, anytime you're in the supply house, they got 9-volt batteries there and double A's and triple A's and all that. Make sure you're stocked up on batteries. Um,
Yes.
I wouldn't recommend grabbing the, 9-volt battery out of somebody's smoke detector. Those things are dead usually anyway, so it's not going to help you. Make sure you got the batteries, you got everything. I mean, that kind of goes back to one of the segments that we did in a previous episode with Jesus was, having the right tools for the job, being prepared for the job, maybe even having like a checklist on things that you might need. I like to write things down, or excuse me. I know that writing those things down and having a checklist is effective. I haven't always done that. I'm like, oh, I'll remember it. That doesn't work. I mean, how many times have you
And
been to
then
the
you
store
end
and
up
forgotten
having to
one
go get the
thing?
9-volt battery on your lunch, and uh,
Right.
that works for your meter, your micron gauge, your refrigerant scale,
Yeah, you haven't changed
and they're
from one
always
to the other
dead.
to the other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not only that, but in order to put the battery in it, you got to go get a screwdriver and all the rest of that. I always complain about having to get a screwdriver to take the battery back off of it, but then things that I have that don't have the screw, I don't have the back anymore.
Yeah.
So just
Oh
like to,
yeah.
just like to point that out, that ends up in the attic insulation or something. But yeah, no, that's all good stuff. All right. Furthermore, on that, every manufacturer's got recommendations for it. ASHRAE also has recommendations on the proper, evacuation techniques to ensure proper vacuum. Working on long piping and all that, a triple evacuation can be far quicker. Doesn't sound like it would be, but it can be far quicker. Um, and if you don't know, that's just a process where you pull a vacuum down to a certain amount, right? You release that vacuum with nitrogen, dry nitrogen, right? And then you do that again. You do that a couple times. Basically, a triple evacuation, right? And that can help speed up the process, particularly like in a high humidity environment. It may take a long time to get a lot of that moisture out.
Or if you're
Um,
servicing something.
or if you, yeah, because God knows, I mean, what is in that system? You guys that attend this kind of stuff, you guys do it perfectly every single time. But there's a lot of people out there, that you bid against and all that. There's no telling what is in that system, right? Maybe they're out replacing a piece of equipment that Jesus put in, a few years ago, right? Um, I'm just messing with you, Jesus. But but maybe they're replacing a piece of equipment that vacuum wasn't pulled, or that they went real old school with it and just put some refrigerant through there and try to push the air out, that kind of thing.
You,
But yeah, on servicing equipment, that's another good point. I mean, you're using a lot of equipment uses oil that has a tendency to try to absorb moisture. You know, some of those oils like POE will break down into their component parts. They'll break down into acids and bases, like what they're formed from. You're not getting that out with a vacuum pump. You're not going to get that out once that's done. Fortunately for us, we use PVE and it doesn't break down like that. Um, that's not an indication not to pull a vacuum, right? So, so not only does it affect the long-term operation of the equipment, it also can affect it in the short term as well, right? Having non-condensables in the system, never fun to troubleshoot, you know. And you can save on time on callbacks and all that.
Yeah,
Playing
James,
Where's
what
That
you want?
Moisture?
Yeah, I wanted to add something on top of that. Whenever we're pulling vacuums out in the field, on any piece of equipment, whether it's, long line sets or even shorter line sets, we can't get impatient and just say, man, this thing's it's not going down. It'll get there. After you verify that it is a tight system and that you have no leaks present. One thing that I used to like to do was as soon as I put whatever I was doing as far as service wise, once I had it pumped down or the refrigerant recovered, I would pull out whatever I was pulling out and then put it back in, obviously. But then as soon as I got it connected and everything, just go ahead and flow nitrogen through it. And now the regulators for nitrogen, they'll have the braze setting, so it's like 3 cubic feet per minute or something like that. And
Yeah,
Right.
I've noticed that did help out as far as how fast the vacuum would pull down. Because when you have it open, especially if you're gonna have it open and run to the store and come back, you're talking about hour, 2 hours, and that just lets outdoor atmosphere get introduced into the line set, into the heck, if it goes all the way back to the compressor into the oil, and as we all know, oil, I mean, it's an absorbent. So
Right.
and it, what's that?
Oh, I said right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that, like, I guess a tech tip uh, for the techs out there, to kind of speed up the process at the end of the day, because, we get impatient and we want it to go as fast as it can. I think that's one of the ways that'll help out the tech out in the field.
that's a really good point, Jesus. I'm always scared to turn the vacuum pump off and break that vacuum because I'm like, all that
Exactly.
time invested getting it down to where it's at, I don't want to lose it. But breaking it with nitrogen and then starting over, it goes quicker than just sitting there or, just waiting on it. So
Yeah, well, I mean,
Especially,
there's other things. I mean, if you change the process in your mind just a little bit for when you start pulling that vacuum, like you get the piping hooked up first, you start pulling that vacuum, and then you do your wiring, your low voltage, your insulating, your taping, your mastic or your pookie, depending on where you're from. You start doing all those things during that time. Go out and take a look, make sure that you're still pulling down, that kind of thing. You can change that process. And in that regard, it's a lot like having a checklist or be prepared for the job. Same thing. It's like, hey, we go and do these things so we're not sitting there wasting time. Now, however, if you do find yourself sitting there on a bucket, nothing to do, you know, you can go to YouTube and take a look at our videos on Gree Comfort. You
there
can
we
do that.
go.
Take a look at
Yep.
that. So yeah, a lot of good information there. I mean, one thing I will point out too is like given moisture, a vacuum is a very important thing. Um, I will say that, I mean, maybe I bring up a little bit of a controversial topic. Who knows? Maybe I cause problems. But for a long time, people thought that filter dryers, would just take care of a lot of those problems. Just wholly eliminate those, or it's a built-in little safety feature, something like that. But it's like putting on a Band-Aid and you're not cut yet, it's like, how about stop cutting yourself, wear your proper PPE and you don't have to worry about, putting bandages on all the time. It's the same thing with a filter dryer.
or
If you put
electrical
it
tape.
like you need to, you don't really need to be drying. If you braze with nitrogen, you don't really need to be filtering either. So, we do have built-in strainers throughout all of our equipment, a load of them, in some of our products, that help to filter that stuff out. And you pulling a vacuum is what is going to help us not have any moisture in that system. But one thing I will tell you to keep in mind on filter dryers is to leave those capped until you're ready to use them.
Yep.
Desiccant,
Yeah.
well, desiccant inside that filter dryer works immediately. It starts pulling moisture out immediately. I've actually been to manufacturing plants before. They built equipment. They put filter dryers in their equipment, and they would begin by removing the caps off the filter dryer, and then it would be about 30 minutes later they'd be putting those filter dryers on there. Just saying. I'm not going to say who that was, but when it acts to absorb moisture almost immediately, you're breaking down that desiccant material. You are making it so it can't operate as well. That's what you're doing there. Um, I mean, that desiccant material is not unlike the desiccant material you might find in like beef jerky or a pair of shoes or what they tell you to put your phone in. That desiccant material has already been used, man. It absorbed the moisture that it absorbed. That's it. and you got to heat it up to get the moisture out, by the way. But
Do you save
yep,
those little packets out of the beef jerky and reuse them for something?
I do not. No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
just checking.
Well, I'm just saying. You know, it's thought that they continue to work and all that stuff. You throw them in a drawer or something like that. Well,
Once they're full, they're full.
that's it.
There's no
They're full.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you do. You have to heat, and you know some of the commercial guys might know that too. You know, dealing with desiccant wheels and stuff, or you know just any kind of dryers like that. You do have to use heat to get the moisture back out of that desiccant material. And some may say, hey, well maybe that'll happen during heat. You know, like during heat mode on the heat pump.
No.
Great. Now the moisture's right back in your system. If it is capable of doing that, you know, it's right back in your system. So it's not. I don't know. You know, we get involved in a lot of conversations, so like you know, around stuff like that. So that's how they come up.